Well, everybody, I am particularly excited to talk to this person. Paul Gertner was a hero of mine when I was a kid growing up. I saw him when I was a teenager, and he wasn't much older than me. I'm not sure how much older than me he is, actually. We'll find out, maybe. And I saw him, and I was this scraggly, unkempt, feral child, and I saw Paul Gertner completely put together, doing incredible magic with incredible professionalism at such a young age, and I thought, that's the guy I want to be. And I still think that. So here he is. I don't need to tell you about his career. It's been, his career is amazing. He's had so many versions of Paul Gertner over the years, and I'm particularly excited to talk to him about his new projects right now. So anyway, here he is. Let me put him here to my right. Did you like that intro, Paul? I've been working on my introduction. I'm trying to be nice. I wasn't going to list all your accomplishments. I wasn't going to list all your accomplishments. You've had so many. You've been all, I mean, you were on the Tonight Show, one of the first magicians, not one of the first, but you were the guy that Johnny loved you. You used to go over to Johnny Carson's house and hang out with him and do magic and play tennis and all that kind of stuff. That's really cool. I want to talk a little bit about that. But first of all, let me ask you, you're living in Boston now.
I'm in Boston. Yeah, we have a couple granddaughters.
That's
literally
so great.
Down the street. And
Paul,
that's
do you remember? They're down the street, so you moved there to be with your grandchildren. That's so perfect. You know, do you remember? You were the first of my friends to have kids, right?
Who was crazy enough to do magic.
To do magic for a living, and then you decided to have kids, and I went, oh,
really?
He actually did it. It's possible. But you gave me some great advice, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but I've been passing it along to people who've had children and they were traveling magicians. Do you remember the advice? Had to do with a calendar.
Is it about when they turned 13 or 14 or 12?
No.
Oh, okay.
You actually gave me a couple pieces of it. You gave me several pieces of advice when I was young. You must have looked at me and go, this kid needs a lot of advice. But the thing you said to me, which I thought, and it really made a difference in our family. And so I have to, thank you for that. But my son, I was doing a lot of corporate work back in the day, like you. But you were actually one of the people keeping me busy. Your agency, you sent me around to different shows and others. But my son was 4 or 5, and he was having a hard time when I left. And you gave me this piece of advice, and you said, take a calendar, right? And you mark red X's on Monday through Friday, every day of the year, except 2 weeks in July or August. And then you take another calendar and you put your schedule on it when you're home, or when you're away, rather. So you go, here's your friends' dads. They're away from home 5 days a week from morning till night. You might see them for an hour or two before you go to bed, but they're tired. And you might see them on the weekends if they have the energy and not playing golf or whatever. And you just go page after page, month after month. They see all these red X's through every day of the week, right? Except the weekends. And 2 weeks in August. And then you say, let's look at my calendar, my schedule. And you show all these blank spots. I'm going to be gone 2 days, but then I'm going to be home 5 in a row, a big block. Then I'll be gone 4 days, but then I'm going to be home a week and a half. And then I'm going to be gone 7 days, but then I'm home like 3 weeks. And then, I did that. I physically did that with your calendars, and it worked. It calmed him down. I go, which dad do you want? And he goes, I want you, the one with all the white space in his calendar. That was a great piece of advice.
That's funny.
Do you remember that, or did you just make that up on the spot?
I remember that. I probably heard it from somebody somewhere along the line.
It was a great little tool, and I've been telling people that. And the other thing you said to me was, the other piece of advice was, you said, be careful about doing magic for your kids' friends, because they're going to come over and go, is your dad home? Can he do magic? And the kid's going to, and your child's going to be, what am I, chopped liver? You came over to see my dad, not me. And you're competing with your child for the friend. And I took that advice too, and be careful about being the life of the party when your kids' friends come over.
Well, there was one thing that, and I've shared this a couple times in corporate environments, that I picked up on early on, and that is people would sometimes, when kids get to be like age 11 or 12, they start to diss the parents. I mean, because the kids know everything.
Yeah, the parents get dumb when the kids turn 12.
The parents get dumb, exactly. And I don't know if somebody talked to me about this or whatever, but I did it, and it actually worked really well. is they said, once your kid's about age 11, 10, 11, you say to them, I have to explain something that's going to happen here. In about a year or 2 years, in the next 1 or 2 years, Mom and I are going to get really, really stupid.
Maybe you're the guy who told me this, actually.
Okay.
That's why I said that.
They're going to be really, really stupid. And it just happens. It's just something that happens. And at that age, at 10 years old, they'll say to you, oh, no, you're never going to, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
No, it will. Honest, we'll get really, really stupid just for a while, and then we'll get smart again. And then when the kids got to be about age, 13, 12, 13, and they say, I want to go to this party or someone like that.
Yeah. And
you said, no, I don't think so. And they say, what are you thinking? See, remember, it's happening. I'm getting really, really stupid. I'm dumb. And it calmed them down. They eventually knew that the line was crossed. And it worked really well.
Pre-show.
Yes. Yeah.
It's all pre-show. It's all the one-ahead method, right?
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. But
who were your early influences in Pittsburgh?
Well, definitely the guy that I started learning magic from, Ron Slanina, who's still living in Naples, Florida now. Gosh, Ron's in his 80s and so on. But because he was the first guy I saw do wing magic, close-up magic. Right. And Ron had a fabulous library of all the Vernon stuff, everything, all the John Rockenbomber, all the Hierophant, Kabbalah, you name it, the Talisman. And so I started going to Ron's at age 16, learning from him. And he very quickly, though, introduced me, not personally, but told me about this guy named Del Rey. And, of course, I was aware of who Del Rey was. I got to see him fairly early on. And Ron and Del were very close. Ron would go to his house, and he would see he saw the table before it was built, the original Del Rey Little
prototype.
Yeah. And so it was great. And so Ron knew all about this. And Ron made handmade cards for Del Rey. And so Del Rey was a big influence in Pittsburgh, too. And then eventually it started to branch out with, there was Eddie Fechter in Buffalo, New York. And then
I knew that Eddie was a big influence of yours. It was. Did you travel to the Forks Hotel? Often to see him.
I used to take once I hitchhiked or so on the first time for Fechter's.
Is that right?
I used to drive to Buffalo, New York to spend like a weekend or so on, or a week, 3 or 4 days, and I'd stay at Eddie's home up above. He had like there were little bedrooms. It used to be a rooming house. And so, I'd sleep in the room that Mike Skinner used to sleep in.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's a great piece of history. I didn't know
it was great. Cool. And this was, it was Mike Skinner's little room. And, but I'd stay there and I'd watch Eddie perform, and I'd get a chance to do a little bit at the tables at the Forks Hotel. And that was even, early Fechter's convention. It was in the early
ones.
Yeah, in the early days. Yeah.
What would you say for guys who never got a chance to see Eddie Fechter? I got to see him a few times. I went to the convention when it was at the Forks, but not that early. What would you say were the hallmarks of Eddie's work or his presence? Or
I always referred to him as sort of like a big teddy bear that sat down at the table, and I mean the people just loved him, and it was his personality. I mean, he was. Yeah. It really was. I mean,
he was a gruff, warm guy. And, back in the 60s and 70s, people didn't have tattoos.
Right. But he did.
Criminals and sailors, right? But he did. And so to look at him, he had that kind of a pompadour thing going on, crew cut. But he was very intimidating to look at.
Yes. But at the same time, there was a warmth that was in him that came out. And like I say, it was like a teddy bear. Everyone would kind of give him a hug or something like that. And the magic, he did something interesting. He had a large repertoire, but when he was at a table, he focused on the certain routines that he did really, really well. And which was always a lesson I kind of thought was interesting. He always
go back to his worker material, his kind of
stuff, and that he had perfected. And he said, because he once said to me, when you're going to be with people for a very short time, you want to do the very best, for that group. That's right. And he did. And but so people would watch him, And but also because of the environment of the bar, he had the ability to go off in different directions and to try things and so on. And I'd see him do new material or different things. But yeah, it was just it was that ability to sit at the table. I used to say to him, I'd watch him perform, and I'd say, "How do you do that?" And I say, "I have the technical skills. I understand the sleight of hand. I can do this stuff, but how do you do that performing stuff?" And so on, which is of course something you know a lot about. And and he would say to me, he said, "It comes with time." He said, "Trust yourself." He says, "You've got the chops, you've got the skills. It'll come with time." And for me, it took a little longer to get there.
Well, me too. But I think when we're young, we're in awe of these guys. You see a Don Allen or a Johnny Thompson or Goshman or somebody like that, and you go, where does that come from? I understand the sleight of hand, but and it is time. It's experience is the greatest teacher, right?
And it's
there's no book you can read. Nobody can tell you anything about it.
No. And what you're kind of seeing there is a complete package. Yeah. Maybe not necessarily a perfect package on all levels, but you're seeing a fairly complete package that they have from a presentational standpoint, from a concept standpoint, from a method standpoint. They've found out who they are and how how
their quirks and imperfections they can make them work for them, because that's what makes them unique.
Yeah. It's
Did
true.
you ever see Eddie work outside the Forks? Did he ever do gigs?
I saw him at a few conventions outside the Forks. Okay. It wasn't the same. I saw Eddie Tulloch also at a few conventions outside the Forks. It was not the same. Them on the trade show floor, and sometimes people would say, "Hey, Paul, I heard this guy Eddie Tulloch is just, or he, Al." I saw him outside his environment at a convention. It wasn't the same. So
magic conventions are such an artificial environment for magic. It's the worst place to perform magic. It really is.
It is, and I think it says a lot about how the environment we learn to perform in has a lot to do with us, and so you take somebody outside that environment, and other people, even Al Goshman, I've seen, and Al Goshman though was sort of designed for magic conventions almost.
That's right.
He grew up working at the close-up table at the Magic Castle. Okay, the act was designed for that, so you could take that act and transport it to a hotel meeting room with a group of people around, and he would get the same.
And it still worked. Yeah.
It worked 100%. Yeah.
Interesting stuff. What was the magic shop in Pittsburgh when you were growing up? Was it the Cuckoo's Nest? Was that?
The Cuckoo's Nest was pretty early on. Well, I guess the very first one was a magic shop called Jim Schwoger's House of Enchantment. And James Schwoger was an older magician who had done work with Blackstone and so on. And he did.
Del Rey worked with Blackstone too, right? He was a backstage assistant with Nick Ruggiero, right?
He was an assistant with Nick Ruggiero, yeah. And you can see pictures of a young Del Rey you get some of these old collectors that have the old pictures of Del Rey or of Blackstone on stage.
They'll see Del Rey standing there holding a table or something.
Young Del Rey, absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, we could talk about Del Rey for hours, I guess.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you an interesting little thing you'll get a kick out of. Del Rey does dice stacking. Okay, you know that. And I've been fascinated. And over the pandemic, I've been watching lots of Del Rey videos.
Really?
Because there was one thing I always wanted Del Rey to teach me. And he never did. Okay, I mean, I talked to him on the phone for hours.
I think I know what you're talking about, but go ahead.
And it was the stack and the stack and the stack, and name a number 2. I want number 3 and number 4 and number 5. Okay, lift them up straight up, strip. Don't move. Don't knock. You're going to knock them over. Don't knock them over. And you'd lift the cup up, and the dice were gone. Right?
It was the defining moment for me. He came to Ring 5 in Dayton, Ohio. I was 13, sitting at the table, right across from him, and he had me. He's stacking these dice. He said, "Lift it up." Careful. I lifted up, and they were gone, and I almost fell out of my chair. It was like somebody punched me in the soul. All the air left my body, and it was I was stunned.
So,
and I still remember that feeling.
I was analyzing that situation.
Yeah.
For the past year, I was watching all these videos, and I found something interesting. I found that Del Rey held the dice cup 2 different ways. Okay, if he was really stacking dice legitimately. Okay, his index finger was on top of the cup. If you watch him stacking dice and he's going to steal dice, his finger is on the right side of the cup.
Interesting.
Okay? Yeah, yeah. Because the reason is his finger's on the right side of the cup because his fingers are a little lower on the cup. Okay, so that you can take and at the very last moment you can steal the die. So I've mastered that. I mean, I've got it down now. I can.
Are you doing it in your show now?
I'm going to be starting to add that.
Oh, yeah. Really?
Yeah, the dice stacking. But it's
my favorite moments in Magic.
It's one at a time still, and then you lift it up and they're gone. But it was watching him stack and noticing just the difference in the finger, which helped me kind of zero in on that. Yeah.
Sleight of hand detective work there.
So yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Well, so before we talk, I don't want to go through your whole history. You've done so many things. I mean, talk about the Carson show. How'd you get that? What happened?
The Johnny Carson show was one interesting one because I had heard Johnny. Michael Lamar had gotten on the show.
That's right.
Michael had moved to LA, and he got on the show. And of course, I'll be honest. I mean, I was a little jealous, man. You know,
sure.
Man, he got on the show. I wouldn't, and because Michael and I are around the same age and so on like that, we kind of came up at the same time. And so I decided I heard Carson was going to retire, and he was going to retire in about I think he signed another 3-year contract or something like that, for millions of dollars. But he was going to retire, and I decided that I wanted to. I didn't want him to retire with me. It wasn't a matter of being on the show, but I didn't want to not try to get on the show. I wanted either to give it a shot. So what I did was I packaged up a videotape, and I had heard Carson mention something about he was doing coin tricks with Michael Landon at the Magic Castle. Michael Landon says, "You were showing a few people that coin trick, you know."
He said that on one of the shows one night.
On the show. So immediately I thought, boom, coin trick. Okay. So I put together a package, a little video pack that had That's Ridiculous, which is a coin trick that I do.
I love that trick, yeah. I remember you doing that.
And I put that, and then I put a couple pieces from That's Incredible, okay, on ABC, right. Just on That's Incredible. And I packaged them up, I sent it out to the Tonight Show, and I decided that I was going to play Super Salesman. And I was probably listening to Zig Ziglar tapes or something. And I said, I'm going to make a phone call every Tuesday for continuously until I get an answer, yes or no. And so I sent out the tape, and I called them Tuesday, and they said, we get thousands of tapes a week. Thank you. Click. And that happened for about 3 or 4 months. Hello. Wow. Yeah, no, we'll call you. Click. But I kept calling 11 o'clock every Tuesday. And then finally, they started saying, you're the magician from Pittsburgh that calls every Tuesday, right? Yeah, actually, we looked at your tape. You're very good. But we have to show it to Carson. I was making progress. And then about 2 weeks later, it was pretty short, they says, hey, Carson looked at your tape. He came in the office. He was raving about you. He said, you're really, really good. And then the guy said, and I'm trying to think of, I was on Jim McCauley, I think, the talent coordinator.
Yeah.
And he says, but Paul, he says, that's all I can do. He says, I'm the talent coordinator, and if you were a comic, I could book you. But you're a magician. Carson makes all the decisions on magicians on the show. And I got off the phone, and I remember saying to Kathy, I said, Kathy, I know what I'll do. I'll use that new service, Federal Express. I'll send him a letter overnight, and I'll do it direct to Johnny Carson. And I'll say, I'd love to be on the show.
Did you figure out his home address or at the studio?
I have the studio address. I just had the studio address. And she says, Kathy says, I don't think you should do that. And I says, why not? And she says, well, here's the thing. Johnny Carson knows what you want. The question here is, what does Johnny Carson want? I said, what do you mean? And she says, well, didn't the producer say he was doing a coin trick in the office and he liked your coin trick on the video? I said, yeah. She says, Johnny Carson wants to be a magician again. She said, send him a letter and talk to him about magic. Talk to him about that coin trick. Talk to him about palming 6 coins and what you were doing. And that's what I did. I sent a FedEx letter out talking all about the coin trick.
Isn't she wise?
Yeah, and literally the same day they got the letter, I get a phone call. Hello, Carson Productions. Please hold for Mr. Carson. And it was Carson on the phone. And he wanted to talk about the coin trick. And he says, you know, you do beautiful work, Paul. I've been watching your videos. I can't do that kind of coin stuff. He says, I can't even palm one coin well, and so on. But we talked for about 10, 15 minutes. and he says, "Hey, when are you coming out? And again, when are you going to be in LA?" I told him a couple weeks from now, and he actually gave me his phone number, and he says, "Well, give me a call when you get in town. We'll get together." And I did, and got together at his house. And 2 weeks.
Unbelievable persistence, man. I'm getting goosebumps. Listen to this story. That's so cool, right? Were you pinching yourself? Was it a surreal experience when you were left his house, when you kind of dawned on you?
That was weird. Yeah, going to the house, because I got to the house, I got in LA and I had his phone number, and I didn't know what that meant. So I go to a payphone. I called up. And I said, "Hello, is this Mr. Carson's house?" And the housekeeper answered. She says, "Yes, who's calling?" I said, "Well, I'm Paul Gertner. I'm a magician. Johnny Carson gave me his phone number and said to call." She said, "Oh, just a second." He gets on. It's him. He says, "Hey, yeah, where are you in town? Yeah, you want to come out the house?" And I was like, "Shit, really?" And I says, "Okay." So he gave me directions to Malibu, because this was before GPS, and he gave me directions to Malibu. And I got off the phone, and I went back to the, I think at Avis. It probably wasn't even that. It was a little car rental company. And I said to the guy, "I need a map, because I got directions." And he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, actually, I'm going to this address here. It's Johnny Carson's house." And the guy behind me
says, "You were kidding."
He says, "You're going to Johnny Carson's house?" He looked at it. He said, "You serious?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I just talked to him on the phone." He said, "What did we rent you?" He said, "You can't go to Johnny Carson's house in that piece of shit." He says, and he gave me a Cadillac.
Is that right?
He upgraded me. He said, "You got to go in a Cadillac." He said, "You're going to Johnny Carson's." And he gave me a beautiful gray Cadillac. And there's no charge, but, and I went to Johnny Carson's house in a gray Cadillac.
That's great. Oh, my God. Well, great. So what was he into? What did he like?
He cards and coins. That's what he showed me, a few card tricks that he played with, and the first visit, was just kind of sitting there. I was just showing him. I didn't realize at the time, but basically it was sort of an audition. I was showing him material for what would work on the show.
Sure.
And that's what I did each time I went out to his house.
So did he kind of basically help you select material that would work for the show, or did he leave that to you?
In a sense, I had a pretty good idea of what I thought I wanted to do, but I ran it. I did run things by him, and because
what year was that?
The 88 was the first year. Second year I was on was 89, and the last year the company called one more time, says, "Hey, he's going to retire. We'll get you on," and that was 92, I believe it would have been.
Wow.
So I was on right before he retired. I was on within the last 3-4 months.
Wow.
I think actually I was the last magician on the show.
Is that right? Is it true, the story I always heard, that he got turned away from the castle because he had a turtleneck, and then he didn't have any magicians on the show for a long time after that? He was
I don't know about the magician's end, if he got a little annoyed, but he didn't have a necktie the one time, and he turned him away.
That's hard to believe.
That's what happened. That's what I understand. Yeah, he wasn't real happy about that because turtleneck.
Oh well. Anyway, well, tell me, what's going on in Boston right now? What are you doing? I want to hear about this show.
Yeah,
because you figured it out. I mean, I look to you, and it's like Paul's done everything right. You've always been smart, in your career and your material and stuff. And you found this place, the Omni.
Yeah, actually, it was one of those weird little things where I had decided I always thought it would be fun to have a set show somewhere, and but I wanted a close-up show. I did not want a parlor show, because there were lots of guys. There are people doing that all over the country. Nice
all over the world, yeah.
And they're really good at it, and they're they're funny on stage, and they can do it for a large group or something like that.
Right.
My strength has always been in the power of the close-up material with people up close. Okay, and usually, so that's what I wanted. I wanted a close-up show. I wanted the same kind of show that I remember seeing Eddie Fechter do at the big round table, where everyone was crowded in watching, freaking out.
That's what Tim used to do too. Tim used to put them, because they go, "We're going to give you a half, like a card table." He goes, "No, I want a round table, an 8-foot round or 10-foot round." He figured that was his best situation.
Because I actually, that's what I did. Was we have the largest round table the companies do, which I think is like a 7-foot round. And then what I did was I had a top built for it that extends it another foot. So it's
is that right?
Round. Yeah, and it's a little tabletop company builds these things. And I actually did a little cutout toward the end, which is square. So I'm not on the round part.
So you're in the notch.
I'm in a notch. I'm not in a notch. I'm in a backwards notch, sort of. So I have a little backwards.
Oh, you have a stage. You have a thrust stage coming at you.
I have a little thrust close-up stage, yes.
Is that right? How interesting.
Yeah. And that puts my first position person a little further away from me. Not further,
right. But it also gives you a corner there.
It gives me the angle.
Your lap.
Exactly.
Yes, that's so smart. When did you figure that out?
Well, it was more an economic thing because I was able to put 10 people around a table, but if I added this tabletop thing, I could put 12. Yeah, we were putting 12. They were a little tight, a little packed, a little tight,
okay.
But we could put 12 at the table.
So if you have 12 at the table, do you put people in stools behind them then? Or do you...
I second row is same level, and then third row is stools. Yeah, but I max it out at about 32 people.
That's a perfect size. Wow.
It's a nice sized audience and so on like that. And that's what we were doing before the pandemic, when we were selling out the nice 32 group, and it was nice. And we charge a little more for the front row seats, the VIP at the table seats, and so on. But anyway, what happened was as far as the Omni Parker House Hotel, it's actually the oldest hotel in the United States. At least that's their claim, because they're in Boston.
I've heard that.
They have a part of the hotel that has not been torn down, that was still there. And people like Charles Dickens used to live at the hotel for a while. And there are a lot of ghost stories.
Great history. Oh,
so
good material.
It's very similar to what Steve Cohen has with the Waldorf Astoria.
Yeah.
When he was doing it at the Waldorf. I know he's now at a new location. But, but anyway, the hotel is kind of a classical hotel, and it was one of those weird freak things where I went to every hotel in Boston that was a major one, and they all pretty much said, That's what they said.
I was just curious how you sold this. So how did you do that?
Well, I just happened to luck into a situation. I went to all these hotels, and they all either wanted way too much money for a room to make it financially worthwhile, or they wanted me to buy dinners, and they weren't interested. And then I was going home a little down that day and so on, because I had been to a lot. And I looked down the street and said, well, that is the Omni. I've stayed at many Omnis. What the hell? And I went in, and I happened to get the sales meeting person who does the meetings. And apparently she was new, and she just started. And she was anxious to get new business. Yeah, and I said, here's where I'm at. She said, what kind of budget? I said, well, this hotel's willing to buy this much, and this hotel's this much. She said, I think we can do a little better than that. And she did a little better than that. But basically, that's what it was. And they let me, it's just a four-wall situation. I just rent the room. They don't really promote it. At least they haven't.
Surprising?
I do a little bit, but up until now, now that the pandemic now that we started up again in July, since the pandemic, now they pay a little more attention. I'm now Mr. Gertner. Okay, yes. And now they pay a little more attention.
Right. You're the only person bringing people in now.
You got it. Or all of a sudden they're seeing a group come, and they're saying, wow, this is great. This is so maybe they'll promote it a little more. I might talk to them a little more about that. But basically, no. It's just a lot of it's been word of mouth. And it's a magazine, Charlie Miller's column. And he said, I love that idea. Here are some ideas. And at the time, Space Invaders was a video game. And he said you could draw little Space Invader figures, and they go from little to big to bigger and bigger with the Pharaoh Shuffle. You could write happy birthday on the side of the deck, and you have it say happy birthday, and that's a nice idea. And one of his ideas was you could write the word unshuffled on the side of the deck,